GDG Cloud Boston and co-hosting chapters are proud to present Become a Generative AI Leader. This is the second of two sessions, and we have a little bit of a different program this evening, which I'll explain in a moment. Let me just say, I'm your host, Norbert Kremer. I'm an AI engineer at Analytics by Design. That's a consulting company that is really just me. And I'm also a Google Developer Expert in Data Cloud, and I'm a community leader at GDG Cloud Boston, and that's the lead chapter on the event this evening. We are recording the session, and this will be posted to YouTube before the end of the week. These are the co-hosting chapters. I want to acknowledge all the support that we get through the GDG network. It's been really great. Some of you are longtime collaborators, and some are newer to joining us, but thank you all for providing your support. All of our GDG meetings are held under with a code of conduct, and there's a link here. And by the way, all the slides will be published with active links, so you don't have to capture any of the links in here or take notes or any of that stuff. It'll all be provided to you afterwards. So the legal document is on the link there called Community Guidelines. The summary is just be kind, participate, ask questions, and we're all here to learn and help each other. Very simple. I wanted to play the video that I tried. I played this last week, but the audio was not working. So Eric Schmidt at Google Next 2017 had this to say about getting onto the cloud.
Just get to the cloud now. Just go there now. There's no time to waste anymore.
And as I said last week, I'll just repeat this because I didn't get the audio working last week. Just learn AI now. Just go there now. There's no time to waste anymore. So that's what we're here to talk about this evening, is the Generative AI Leader certification. The main point of last week's session and today's also is that Google's GAIL certification, Generative AI Leader or GAIL, the GAIL certification learning path gives you the greatest understanding of generative AI for the least effort. And furthermore, this learning path covers material that's not really readily found in any of the other certification training that Google offers. Now that's changing a little bit because the Pro Machine Learning Engineer or PMLE certification is starting to include generative AI, of course, because that's part of MLE, but that was not true a year ago. And this is still the easiest and best place to get started with Gen AI. And this evening, we're doing a little differently. We're opening up the chat on the meeting here, as well as the Slack channel. My co-host from last week, Marianne Ray, was called away on a work emergency. She's not able to join us. So I won't be watching the chat closely. I'm going to go through the material as quickly as I can, and then we'll have a Q&A period at the end, and we will be able to open the camera and mic this week. I didn't want to do that last week because we had such a large group of participants last week. So let me dive in. The situation with Skills Boost is a little tricky. I will explain in a minute. There are several ways to get free access to Skills Boost. That is Google's own learning platform. Most of you probably have already connected to it from, if you were in the session last week, you already know what Skills Boost is and you've already connected to it. What is available to you through multiple programs let me just give you this. There are generative AI learning resources within Skills Boost. This is the beginning of it. This is probably most of it, but there are probably additional labs and courses in Skills Boost that you could find on your own by using the Explore tab in Skills Boost. But these are the main resources for generative AI learning, and these are not non-inclusive of all of the machine learning engineering, for example. That's a little bit of a different pathway to follow. This is just the Gen AI and a little bit of agentic agent development with possibly with ADK, the Agent Development Kit, which is the new agent development framework that Google brought out in the spring. So this will give you a really good start. All of these are live links. Anything that's underlined is a live link. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to click through. These are a group of labs that are curated and selected for access through Skills Boost through a special program. I'll explain in a minute what the programs are, and it's a little tricky as to which program you're actually in, and I'll explain that in more detail in a minute. So let me focus on first the learning resources. There are multiple ways to get learning about AI and generative AI, and I want to go through that first. Then we'll come back to talk about Skills Boost, and then we'll talk about the exam registration process itself. Okay, there are additional generative AI learning resources from Google that are made available through Code Labs. They're called Code Labs. These are on GitHub repos, and the ones that I'm really focusing on here have been developed by Christina Lin and the Google Developer Relations team. These are excellent, high quality materials. The Christina Lin and the DevRel team have been presenting these in a series of events called Google Roadshow, and these are sometimes being done in coordination with DevFest in different cities. In particular, New York City, I think, is having actually kind of like 3 days worth of these sessions, because there's so many people signed up they couldn't do them all in one day, so they decided to have a second day of the road show, and then I think in the middle of that, if I understand correctly, there's a dev fest right in the middle of that, which is also going to have similar workshop material. These are technically really excellent. They'll show you how to use the ADK. Remember last week I mentioned that what you learn in the GAIL certification learning path is really just the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to Gen AI, right? It gives you the foundation that you need to know, like what LLMs are and how they're used in the enterprise, but it just kind of touches briefly on the agents themselves. And then these are the code labs, are where you would go to get deeper knowledge for the agentic development, so-called multi-agent systems, and agent development with ADK, and also obviously the MCP is used in conjunction with ADK. To go into all that, you can really run these code labs, are designed to be run on your own. There are 4 different labs. You can run them on your own. It is better if you can go to a live event that is run by Google or the DevRel team. When Google runs these events in person, they do all 4 of these labs together in the same room, which is a little bit of a challenge because different people are doing different labs and raising their hand, asking for help. And we have a number of TAs that run over and help them and get people moving along that pathway. And then at the very end, all 4 of these roles. So this is a role-playing game if you haven't worked that out. Christina is a technical expert on agent development. She's also intensely into these role-playing games, and she developed this as kind of a gamification aspect to it, which is extremely interesting, and it's the best thing I've ever seen done like this. So fantastic opportunity. If you get any chance to go see one of these Google events, please do check that out. I believe I had a link in the notes here on this slide, which I can't really see right now. I think they're up. If it's not there, I'll put a link to the calendar of these events in different cities across the United States. I'm not clear on what's being done outside of the United States. I have a question out to discover if there's some opportunity to see this in Europe, for example. Had some questions about that with one of my colleagues in Spain. All right, let's keep going. You can also go to Kaggle and learn from Kaggle. Most of you know what Kaggle is. It's the data science challenge website where they put challenges up. You can grab a data set and try to build a machine learning model or AI model to get the best performance that you can on the Kaggle data set. So there's kind of a contests and a leaderboard and things like that. Well, Kaggle was so great and successful that Google bought the company, much like they bought Quick Labs and converted it into Skills Boost. So Kaggle is actually owned by Google, and they are now offering this. This literally just I saw this post today, and I had an older version of this slide 2 hours ago, and I literally just dropped in the newest content here, which is their repeating of the 5-day AI Agents Intensive course from Kaggle. That's going to be a virtual event, so you can sign up online. That is, and again, this is a live link here on the green, the first green line here is a live link to that event. It's Monday through Friday, the week of November 10th. So it's that whole week, and I think it's pretty much not all day, not 8 hours necessarily, but I think it's most of the day. So you kind of have to, it's called intensive for a reason. You have to dedicate some effort to do this if you want to participate in this Kaggle series. But this is, from what I've heard, a really fantastic program. You can see from the titles of these talks how intense they go and how deep they go, like, all the way from architecture to prototype to production at the very end there. So that's available on Kaggle. Now there are a couple of other things that your Skills Boost access will unlock. These are not really generative AI, but they're related topics. So there's a couple of certificates called Google Cloud Computing Foundations and Cloud Cybersecurity. Now, a certificate is not the same as a certification, right? A certificate is just like a PDF file that says, hey, you completed this lab, congratulations, that's it. But a certification, of course, is a more elaborate thing with a learning path, and you have to take an exam, pass the exam with a certain pass rate, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And I just want to call out here that certificate is not the same as certification. So despite the similarity in the word, don't be confused by that. There's no exam involved in these certificates. They're just additional learning paths that'll be unlocked by your Skills Boost access. Okay, there are lots of other places to get training on machine learning AI and generative AI. I won't name the cloud service providers. You know who the other ones are. This is a Google event, so we talk only about Google here. And actually also every data platform vendor is getting into the agentic AI development game now as well. Some are leading pretty close to where Google is. I do believe that Google Cloud is one of the best places to be developing agents right now. The ADK is really good. I've talked to a number of people at in-person events and asked them, what do you think about the other frameworks? Are there anything that's better or easier to use? And the other ones that are mentioned are LangChain and Crew AI. So there certainly are other frameworks out there that are good. I think Google's ADK is arguably the best one, or certainly one of the top ones to consider, and therefore Google Cloud is a great place to be running that. Although it is open source and open model, so you can run ADK anywhere you choose on any cloud service provider. So as I said, every data platform vendor, every cloud service provider has learning resources for generative AI, because that's where all the action is today. So if you work with a data warehouse or data lake house and you're happy with that vendor, talk to them and find out what their learning resources are. In addition to the GAIL, as I said last week, I'll repeat it this week, everybody should get the GAIL cert, because it's the most value for the least effort. It's just great. And a couple people, Ash Rowe, for example, posted in the Slack channel earlier that finding that to be the case as well. Now, the other ones I could mention are vendor neutral ones. I will call them by name. These are either training platforms like Deep Learning AI and Coursera and DataCamp. 3 Blue 1 Brown is a popular website for lots of things, calculus and linear algebra, and you can learn there about what is gradient descent and what's the importance of that in training AI models, things like that. You can get a lot of that theoretical stuff from 3 Blue 1 Brown. That's really good place. Anthropic and Hugging Face are places where models are collected, and you find lots of open source models and some proprietary models on those websites. They each have very good training programs as well. And then, of course, all the tool vendors on the right side: Crew, AI, H2O, LangChain, and Udemy is another website that has education materials. And I'll just make a shameless plug here for a conference where I teach at TDWI Transform 25. This is really a data conference. We're beginning to move into the AI sphere as well. So, and I teach a course there about cloud data platforms, and I teach a second course about data quality for AI. So that kind of rounds out the training resources that you might want to look at. Let's talk now about Skills Boost. How do you get access to Skills Boost? So basic Skills Boost, the reason I didn't mention in all this detail last week is because you didn't need it. You don't need it for the Gen AI Leader certification because there are no labs in that learning path. The basic Skills Boost access without lab credits, therefore, is anybody can just sign up with a Gmail ID and you can get into Skills Boost. I don't know exactly when you need a Gmail ID. You may be able to sign up for Skills Boost without a Gmail ID. I don't think so, but eventually you're going to get to a point where you will need a Gmail ID. So I just recommend use a personal Gmail ID. If you use a corporate Gmail ID, like in other words, a Google Workspace ID, it's going to work, but you run the risk of accidentally getting onto the wrong billing account and charging your training activity to your company's Google billing account. That's probably not what you want to do, especially since we're giving you free access. You don't want to be charging that to your company when you could get it for free. So the personal Gmail ID is the way to go. If you have a school account, a Google Workspace at a university, that will also work fine. The issue there is that if you graduate, you may lose access to that, although a lot of schools do give perpetual email access. So that may or may not work. But I know the one thing that will always work is if you have your own personal Gmail ID and you use that consistently throughout your Skills Boost and use that for signing up for your exam registration, that will always be guaranteed to work. So that's why we recommend that. And now another thing that anybody can get just for the asking is something called Google Developer Program. This used to be called the Innovator Program. It's been rebranded this year. It's called Developer Program Standard Tier. Again, that underlying words there is a live link to take you to that. You can sign up for the standard tier. That gets you 35 lab credits per month on Skills Boost. 35 credits per month is a sort of moderate amount of credits. Normally, the way Skills Boost works is that you can buy credits if you want to. You can buy 1 credit for $1, and most labs use either 1 credit or 5 credits. There may be some other options these days, but the ones I've seen use either 1 credit or 5 credits per lab. A lot of the heavy machine learning labs in the pro machine learning engineer pathway do use 5 credits because they involve activating GPUs to accelerate the learning. So they're going to be a little more intensive. You might end up training a model for an hour, and that's going to charge you 5 credits for that. There's really not too much reason to pay for credits. You can get 35 Skills Boost lab credits per month just for asking by getting into the Developer Program Standard tier. There are higher tiers available. There's a so-called pro level tier, which I have by virtue of being in some other Google programs, and like being a leader of this group, for example, gets me the pro level. That would cost, I think, around $300 a year. That's the worst you would ever have to pay if you decided you wanted to go all in and just pay for it. that would be $300 per year. But usually there's enough loopholes that you can get free access. And I'm going to move to that now. I'm going to tell you what you can get by free for event participants. So if you keep going, if you find your local GDG and you keep going to an event every 6 months or so, you'll kind of get enough free access probably to keep you going that you wouldn't need to buy credits too much. So if you're in a Get Certified workshop, and you're in one now, by the way, that should be now, not new. You're sitting in one now, and you see this Get Certified. We're running this program under Get Certified Community Edition. Okay, that means you're going to get access to all of Skills Boost, but only for a limited duration. And I don't know what that duration is because the program has changed. It used to be the end of the month when the program is running. In other words, the end of September is how it used to work. I think it is now 6 months. I think it's been extended so that it doesn't just drop off at the end of September. It probably will carry for 6 months. If anybody knows better than this, could drop a note in the chat here. I'm not seeing too much. I'm going to read all these chats in a minute, but I'm not looking at them right now, just so you know. Now, the other way to get access is through this new program called Skills Boost Sharing Group here, and that's for specific events. Now, I did register this event as a Skills Boost Sharing Group event, but I'm not sure whether the Get Certified program supersedes the sharing group or vice versa. And so if anybody wants to be in this sharing group, you'll have to well, actually, let me turn it around this way. Anybody who attended this week's session or last week's session, so if you just checked in and you showed up even for 10 minutes, I'm going to add you to the Skills Boost sharing group. And then I think you will get the union of the sharing group access plus the Get Certified access. But I'm not 100% sure because this is the first time I run an event that had both kinds of access. But if you simply, for anybody who simply registered on my event but didn't actually sign in, I'm not going to add them. So if you're here, you're hearing me now, you're going to get this second access also. Now, finally, on the bottom here, there's a third way to get what we call Cloud Console credit. This is for a specific event. This is what Google Developer Relations or DevRel team uses for their events. This grants you $5 credit on a separate billing account that you then attach to a project. You can use that for the day, and that lasts also, again, I'm not exactly sure what the expiration is on that. In the past, it was maybe only 1 or 2 days, and I think it's been extended to at least a week, and maybe it's now a month or longer. So they've been getting a little more generous with as Google gains more experience with these programs. They've been extending these timelines out a little bit. What I can say is that our meeting chat here today will go away at the end of this session. The Slack messages will persist for 90 days because we're on a free Slack version. So if you do have any questions or follow-up questions next week or next couple of weeks, put them in chat. I'll monitor that for until these messages all scroll off the back end, then they'll all be gone after 90 days. Okay, so that is Skills Boost, different ways to get Skills Boost and Cloud Console credit for an event. If you're on this latter thing, the Cloud Console credit, you'll be given very clear instructions in the day of. There will be people there to help you get set up and make sure that you are not accidentally charging your own account. In other words, in fact, I did that the first time. I grabbed the $5 credit, but then I didn't get my project connected to it, so I actually ended up paying for probably $2 worth of activity during that lab, during that day, and I didn't actually get use of the $5 credit. So there is a specific set of steps that you have to follow, but there will be people there to help you with that during the event. Okay, let's keep going. When you get to the ready to take the exam, now the benefit of studying the learning path is that you learn about generative AI. So you could say, well, I'm happy, I just learned everything, I don't need to take the exam. If you do want to take the exam, that'll cost you $100. And what I recommend in that case, go back to, again, the notes of this slide will have the links back to this, but you want to go back to this Generative AI Leader certification, go back to the home page for that certification. Remember last week I said look for train for the exam, that will bring you to Skills Boost Learning Path. This week I'm going to highlight view the exam guide and review the sample questions. The next slide I'll show you what the exam guide looks like, and that's just a breakdown of the coverage. So this is the certification, this is called certification exam guide for Gen AI Leader. Every certification, there are 14 certs, right? There are 14 certs within the Google Cloud universe. Every one of them has an exam guide like this that says, these are the sections, this is approximately how much will be covered, so you can know where to focus your study. And make sure you feel comfortable in each one of these areas, because you could really concentrate on the top two. And if you miss out on business strategies in section 4, you may lose up to 15% of the exam right there. That you might still be able to pass by getting an 85%, but that would mean you have to do perfectly on all the other sections. That's unlikely. Okay, so don't make sure you have kind of uniform coverage across all these areas. That's one of the benefits of studying for a certification, actually, is to get that breadth of exposure to the entire product suite. Okay, this is now called the Gen AI Leader sample questions. I'm not going to step through for this Gen AI Leader or GAIL certification. I'm not going to step through the questions themselves. When we do these get certified workshops, as for the pro level workshops, we do go through the questions and we explain some test taking strategies, like how the questions are built. The idea is like kind of get insight into what is the question really asking. It's usually trying to differentiate across knowledge that makes you choose either one side or the other side of a dichotomy. That's often the structure of the question, and the answers will be built. So usually there's like two answers that are competing for your attention, and you have to choose the right one of two. And then often the other two, like usually the questions have multiple choice of four possible answers. Two of them are the legitimate, what I call the legitimate contender answers, and then the other two are kind of like distractors in a way. They're kind of like, yeah, you can usually kick out two of them right away, and then you're left with choosing between the two left over. And so, like I said, in the pro level workshops, we spend an hour or more going through sample questions, and sometimes it's happened to us last year that we had several GDEs on the call, and we did not always agree on the answer, which was kind of amusing. And sometimes they don't give the actual answers. Now, in this case, on the sample questions here, it's a Google form that has 20 questions. You fill out that Google form, and then you get the specific answers in response, and you get a kind of an explanation of why each answer is right or wrong. And then from that, if you didn't do well on the sample questions, you could go back and do some more study to figure out where you need to improve. Now, you may want to take this before you start your learning path. I usually don't do, in other words, you could do like a before and after. You could do this before and then do the learning path and then do this again. I usually don't do that. I just want to go right into the learning path and then I take the sample questions just to make sure that I'm really prepared for the exam. I would say, again, my advice here on the foundational level exams is a little different than it is for pro level. This just is not that difficult. The material here is not that difficult. So I would say, and again, this is my unofficial advice. This is not anything from Google or anything like that. For pro level, if you're passing 85% of the sample questions, I would say you're probably ready to go try it. For this foundational level, because there are easier material and easier exams, I would say you want to do maybe 90% on the sample questions. And I'll open the mic up at the end. And I know I'm seeing other people here that have a lot of certifications, so you can weigh in with your opinions as well. But this is the way I look at it. For pro level, those are difficult exams, especially pro machine learning engineering or PMLE. That's probably the most difficult exam. If you're getting 85% on the sample questions, you probably will do fairly well on the real exam. Now, I say probably because Google does not give you a score. You don't get any feedback at all when you take a certification exam. You just get a pass or fail indication immediately after taking the exam. You do not get a score or any kind of feedback on what your weak areas are, your strong areas. That's in distinction to the way AWS works, for example. I think AWS gives you a breakdown of your score by different areas so that if you do fail, you will at least know where you didn't do well. Or I'm not 100% sure that AWS does it right, but many other exams that I've taken give you kind of a little bit of an assessment where you did better, where you didn't do so well. That's useful. I think with Google, what's going on is that I'm not even sure that every exam is the same from person to person. I think every person that takes an exam might get a different set of questions. And I think that those questions might be decided dynamically during the exam. So if you're not doing well in a certain area, maybe they ask you more of those questions to kind of really pin down your exact level of knowledge in that area. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do worse. And that's why they don't give you an absolute number as being the cutoff as do other exams. I don't think there is actually a score that indicates pass or fail. I think it could be dynamically driven each time a person takes a different exam. Okay, I don't know for sure. There might be someone else on this call who has a little bit more knowledge about this than I do. But that's what I know just from taking the exams and taking probably 10 or more Google exams over the years. Okay, to register for the exam, there is, again, these are live links. Anything with underline is a link that you can follow. The registration process advice from Google is what I recommend you follow. There's unofficial unofficial advice you can find on YouTube. I don't really recommend that you follow that. There's also study guides for all of the certs, including this one. You can find those on YouTube and on Udemy and other education websites. You can also find so-called exam dumps that have sometimes the exact questions that are on the exam. That's actually a violation of the Google terms of service when you sign up for the exam. I'm not sure where people are getting those questions. The text of the question sometimes is verbatim from the exam. So someone is breaking the policy there to get that and publish that. I don't recommend any of these approaches. I think particularly for these foundation level exams, if you go through the learning path, I think you have a very good chance of passing on the first try. And if you don't pass, usually it's because you're not sufficiently prepared, or you've tried to go take the exam too soon without going through the entire learning path. That's been the case for me. I've taken many exams over the years, and the one occasion where I failed is where I just had a deadline. I didn't have enough time to prepare. And I just said, well, I'm going to go in and wing it and see what happens. And I failed. Okay. I failed at one time. Whenever I've gone in and felt comfortable and prepared, I've always passed. So that's just been my experience. For foundational level, the exam fee is $99. We, through this program, cannot provide exam vouchers. We did sometimes in the past have that ability. We don't have that anymore. Google used to give us some vouchers. We don't get that anymore. Your company may provide an exam voucher because there is an enterprise level of this Get Certified program that companies, Google, in other words, Google customers, get into a Get Certified Enterprise Edition. They may have exam vouchers that you can get through your company. I would say either your manager or your HR department or your training department would be the people that know about that. Some companies will actually pay for your exam fee as they see it as a way to provide an incentive for you to learn more things, which is always great. My personal recommendation, again, is go to an exam center if you can. If there's one close to you, go to an exam center. There is a remote proctoring option for home or office. It requires a completely empty surroundings. In other words, it's not open book. Okay, you cannot have any papers or books in the room, and you have to kind of pan around the room with your cell phone and show that the room is empty and the door is closed, and then you're monitored throughout the taking of the exam. There's a special browser called Lockdown Browser that doesn't let you access any Google searches or anything like that. So it is a little bit of a setup. Some people do find, especially during COVID, it was great to have this option for the remote proctoring or home proctoring. I personally have had a negative experience with it, and several other GDEs and GDG organizers have also reported difficulties. Um, that can be that the lockdown browser doesn't work correctly. And I found in my case that the support was not able to solve that problem. And I'll leave it at that. I just didn't like that experience. I've also had occasionally, of the 10 or so exams I've taken at exam centers, I've had one time a situation where the browser didn't work at that place either, and we had to switch over to another workstation. The difference being is if the exam center cannot get the exam started for you, that's on them, and they have to either keep working at it until it works, or they're going to refund your fee and make you come back some other time. It's never happened to me. The worst thing that's ever happened in the exam center is that we kind of had to reboot the system or move to a different workstation or something pretty, took 5 minutes instead of 1 minute. And that's that. But I did have a negative experience with the remote proctoring. So it may be better now. I don't know. I've heard many people do like it, and it's obviously convenient to do it. And especially if the exam center is in some cases hundreds of miles from where you live, then obviously I would recommend the remote proctoring. So that's up to you. And if you pass, celebrate. You're now a GAIL, as I call it, and you're officially certified. It's probably your first Google Cloud certification, foundational level. Congratulations. I would then recommend that you step up and do perhaps an associate level, or maybe just go to a pro level. I'll talk more about those options in another session on another day. And if you happen to fail, well, I would recommend this for you.
Mr. Hart, here's a dime. Call your mother. Tell her there's serious doubt about your becoming a lawyer.
Okay, I'm kidding. I never wanted to be a lawyer anyway, but I'm joking here. It is, if you do somehow fail this exam, it is probably because you were not prepared sufficiently. Come back, try again, step through. You probably will get some insight into where the difficult questions that you weren't able to answer. But this foundational level exam is just not that difficult. So it's usually a lack of preparation would be what causes you to fail. And I think if you're scoring 85 to 90 or above on the sample questions, I think you're going to do fine. If that's not the case, please let me know. Sorry I can't offer any refunds or financial reimbursements if you don't pass, but please let me know if my advice has been inaccurate in some way. Okay, we're getting to the end here. I'm going to let the Odd Squad's Miss O have the last word, as we tried to do last week, but here she goes.
Well, what are you waiting for? Go!
And that's it. So with that, I'll give our contact info. There's the Slack channel.